Hey, Rock Solid Wrestling fans. This week I have a very special guest. Well, they're all special guests, but what makes him very special is that he was the first guy to record for this podcast. So you're talking about like uncharted territory here with Talk Solid Wrestling itself. I don't know if this one's going to air first, but I wanted to throw that little tidbit in there for anybody who's watching or listening to this that will be interested in the history of this show in the future. Probably Rob, and that's it. And Rob knows who he is. So what are we talking about in this episode? Well, I always give my guests a couple of different options for things that they can discuss on the show. And one of the things that I gave as an option was pick a match that means something to you, whether it's a match you love or hate, or was a pivotal moment for you in your wrestling fandom. And let's talk about it. And Mark was nice enough to pick what I consider a really great match, Tito Santana versus the Macho Man, Randy Savage, early February in the Boston Garden of 1986. If you're a modern wrestling fan and you don't know this match, don't be scared by the fact that it's old guy stuff. Me and Mark are a couple of old wrestling farts, but we know clearly Mark knows good wrestling because this is an excellent matchup. So I am going to put the links to the video in the description so you guys can watch it and then come back and listen to us yak about it a bit. But I also want you guys to do me a favor, which is I want you to check out Mark's stuff, which is, for those of you that don't know, if you've never been to a Rock Solid Wrestling show, first of all, shame on you. Secondly, Mark runs Mark's Wrestling Masks, and you can see him at every Rock Solid Wrestling event selling his masks. He is a one-of-a-kind, top-tier mask maker, and you got to check out his stuff, especially follow him on Instagram, on Facebook, on social media. If you need a mask made right, go to Mark's Wrestling Mask, check his stuff out, and then enjoy the interview. All right, you ready? Mark and I talk Tito Santana versus Randy Savage. Let's get into it. Danny, ring the bell. Okay, man. So like Tito Santana and Macho Man Randy Savage, Boston Gardens, early February, 1986. So why this match specifically? Why is this match important to you, or why did you want to feature it on the show today?
Well, a couple of reasons. First, it was WWF back then. Basically, being this way up north, we didn't really have NWA. It's unless you stumbled on it. No internet back then, it's just basically cable or no cable. So first, like I said, WWF, I was always hooked on them. And secondly, I was able to see this on the big 12-foot dish back in the day. So I stumbled upon it in the Boston Gardens, and then I said, okay, I'll be able to watch this card. I believe it was like a Monday night, because they used to do them in New York as well, Madison Square Garden on Mondays. And that was one of the matches on that one card that I remember, and it stood out first because Santana, I've always been a big fan of his. Pure wrestler, hardworking, always gave him his all, good as a single, good as a tag, whatever. And Savage, what can't you say about this guy? He was just, he had everything, right? But this was the era of Savage that I loved the most. I didn't care when he was in WCW or even Macho King Savage. It was this Savage that I loved. And it was just a great match overall. And the crowd was just live, was into it. The ring was loud, all the bumps and everything, you could hear it a mile away. And yeah, that's what basically turned me on to this.
So is it safe to say that this match kind of takes you back to a time that you remember wrestling like very fondly? Like it seems like listening to you talk about it, it hits a nostalgia button really hard for you. Is that safe to say?
It's very safe to say, because back then there were feuds, like major feuds that would drag on for months at a time, years at a time. And Santana being IC champ, he won it from Valentine, which is another one of my favorite of all times. And those matches were just brutal, like hard hitting and everything, especially Valentine, with those haymakers he would give and stuff. And yeah, it's just the nostalgia of the old school wrestling. There was no glitz, no glamour, except Savage coming out to, pomp and circumstance. But I mean, it was just raw boned wrestling back in the day, which I grew up in. I was born in 1970, so I've seen a lot of wrestling back in my day. And that stuff is always in the back of my mind. I'll remember this forever from now, like, my whole life, but I won't remember what happened to me yesterday, type of thing. So this is always embedded in my brain.
I'll tell you, like, there's definitely a little bit of culture shock going back and watching it compared to today's product. Because I'll tell you, the first thing that stood out for me watching this is what the hell was Danny Davis wearing? Those khaki pants with just like a t-shirt or something that he found backstage. I'll tell you something, Derek Hamill would not be caught dead in an outfit like that these days, but everything was just so like Wild West back then. It didn't really matter. You talked about Savage coming out to Pomp and Circumstance. He didn't even come out to that back then, and neither did Tito.
No.
No music whatsoever. I mean, it's one of the things that made Savage stand out in that era was the fact that he wore big flashy robes and he had a manager that wore matching attire to him. It really made him stand out a lot. So I absolutely understand what you say. Like, it's a different time frame. It's like going back in a time machine to watch this stuff.
That's right. And Savage was unique. Just put it that way. He's very unique. He can do everything. He did it all and everything. And he was just it ran in a family. Like, his dad was pretty good. His brother, I was not much of a fan, but he was good for the role he was put in. And back to our referee, rock solid referee Derek. He's one of the best out there, And Danny Davis has nothing, on him or nothing.
I
like
agree.
You were mentioning about,
you're hearing it right
Davis.
here. Hot take: Derek Hamill better than Danny Davis. I'm going to say it right there. Right. It's on the record. And I stand
Hamill
by
is
that.
not disheveled. He's not disheveled. He's not wearing white sneakers in the ring. He's very professional. His shirts are tucked in. He's got the man bun going and all that. Davis didn't have the Mr. X mask or whatever. So yeah, it's all good.
I'll say this, though. I don't know that even Derek Hamill would have caught that finish, though. Man, what a finish. Was Savage grabbing what appeared to be like a little tiny, it almost looked like a shake weight from today's modern times, but it was smaller, right out of the trunk. And you could tell this is a different time because the movements, everything is so much bigger in this match. Like, I think if people who only grew up on the modern product were to go back and watch this, and we do encourage you to go back and watch this, we'll post the link in the descriptions of the episode. Everything almost comes off goofy. I think modern wrestling fans would watch this and say, that's pretty silly how big they're being, but they have to understand that, like, that was what it was back in the 80s. You had to play to the folks that were in the nosebleeds of the Boston Garden, and the Garden was like a lot of old arenas. They weren't built so that every seat in the house was a good seat like they are today, right? Sometimes you got crappy seats and you could barely see anything. And that was only if you didn't have a big, foundational beam sitting in front of you to block your view. So you had to go bigger for everything. You had to make your movements bigger. So like when Savage goes into his trunks, it's not like he's just coyly reaching in there so that the TV cameras will catch it. He's like, whoa, brother, I'm going in there.
That's
and I'm really... He looked like he was digging for something down there. You could tell.
He went for the big reach for sure. He made sure like everybody in the arena seen it, right? From the nosebleeds to ringside. And back then, any seat in the house was like a lot cheaper than what you'll see on WWE charging today, right? Or whatever. But the match just flowed. And I've always been a sucker for, like, not saying every match, but when you had the foreign object pop out, either like the loaded mask or the loaded boot or the fireball, the salt, whatever, as Gorilla called it, what was it? The hard rolled cold steel. Yeah. And like you said, it looked like a mini shake weight of some sort, right?
Yeah.
And it's when the cameraman grabbed it at ringside and he grabbed it and he's just showing around and he put it back down. Like it just looked real. I'm like, holy crap. Like, he got knocked senseless. And of course you see the blood after a while. You don't really see it, but you see Tito going for it and everything. And it was just awesome. And it was a 14-minute and some odd second match, which told the whole story in that time.
Oh yeah. It was a real breeze to watch it. And it's so funny because one of my favorite parts of that match is after he gets the pin and he throws it out of the ring. And, that's such a great little thing that nobody really does today. And what I wanted to talk about and just kind of go back to again was the big movements. And it wasn't just so that people in the back rows would see it. It's so that everybody would understand the setup to the punchline. It's not a joke, but I'm using that analogy, right? Because
Yes.
here's the thing. Even if you miss Savage punching Tito, if you know that he went into those trunks and grabbed something out, and then you see Tito get punched and go unconscious, if you saw Macho reaching into his trunks, you know why. Like
Exactly.
it's set up for the punchline, right? So
That's right.
it's such a great little example of like how bigger was better back then. I will say this though, as a fun little aside, one thing that wasn't bigger back then was the physiques on Tito and Savage. It was a real shock watching this, and I was like, oh, you can absolutely tell there's a, well, let's say some physical enhancements happening in the WWF after this time, after WrestleMania 2, because like this is definitely coming from a time where I'm like, oh yeah, this is Memphis Randy Savage here. We're talking about
Yes,
like
absolutely.
not being able to afford food, Randy Savage here.
Exactly.
And I'm sitting there
Absolutely.
looking at Tito and I'm like, man, I remember him being a lot like thicker in Strike Force, and he definitely was.
Just a
Wink,
couple of years
wink,
later,
nudge,
he put on
nudge.
the weight. Yeah, for sure. For sure. Absolutely. And like I said, if the match flowed and, shortly after this, Danny Davis became a bad guy.
That's
Uh,
right.
Savage, and the thing is, which I love about this, Savage was known for the elbow drop, the flying elbow off the top rope. Santana, known as what he tried, was the flying forearm or the figure four, which none of those happened in this match. It was the damn foreign object that Savage used, and that's what I loved about it.
And it was kind of cool that they did that and that the elbow drop didn't even come into play in this match. And it was a great way to protect everybody involved
That's
because
right.
he didn't do the elbow drop. So that means that, because if he did it, one of two things would have to have happened. A, he would have had to hurt Tito by beating him with it because you have to protect his finish, or
That's
you
right.
would have killed his finish by having Tito kick out of it. So instead of trying to kind of cover that up or come up with something convoluted, they said, let's just not even go there. Let's not even tease it. Let's not worry about it. Let's make the story about Macho being completely outclassed by Tito here. And so he has to resort to desperate tactics, which he does right from the outset by having his first move be a poke to the eye.
That's right. That's right. And Santana working on his leg a lot too. And you've seen Savage hop around on that right leg, right? He had the left leg injured. You've seen Santana working on it, and I figured, oh, figure four, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. But when I saw that live, I was 16 years old or 15 years old at the time. I'm like, I never thought there'd be a title change, not from Santana, not happening, not Savage coming in taking it, because Savage was basically like a relatively brand new guy on the scene. He was there like a few months or so, and he got a really good push from the company. And people believed in him, and it didn't. It helped out that he had Miss Elizabeth with him as well,
Oh yeah,
and
100%.
so yeah, it was just overall great nostalgia for me. It was a great old school match.
Actually, it's so funny that you mentioned Elizabeth because I also want to shout out to Gorilla Monsoon and Jesse Ventura on commentary here, proving once again why they're my favorite duo of all time. Because they had a great line in there where Gorilla talked about a fan buying flowers for Elizabeth and Macho Man throwing them away. Now, of course, we didn't see that, but it doesn't matter because Gorilla is just adding to the story and the character, right? It's a really wonderful example of how play-by-play and color guys back then had that freedom to enhance the story and enhance the narrative however they saw fit, because a lot of the TV cameras wouldn't be on entrances. They would just have the one camera, the hard cam right there in the middle of the ring, and like maybe one roaming camera on the outside, but they didn't shoot entrances and stuff, right? It wasn't a big part of
No.
it. So you could do something like that where you could make up a story and, go with it. And I absolutely love the response to it where Jesse goes, could you imagine one of these fans trying to buy Elizabeth flowers? How dare they? And Gorilla saying, well, wait a minute, what's wrong with that? And he says, well, clearly the Macho Man doesn't want them doing that. And Gorilla says, well, he never said that. And Jesse responds with, he didn't have to. And Gorilla goes, well, clearly.
And Gorilla says, flowers are expensive, these days.
Oh, yes, that line, because I was like, oh my God, Gorilla, you wouldn't even believe today, man.
That's right. That's right. That's what I was going to say. But yeah, they were a great duo. They made that broadcast team Gorilla, a big fan of Gorillas from day one, and so unfortunately, he doesn't have many matches on YouTube or anything like that available, or on the network or whatever, YouTube or whatever. But Jesse also as well, right? He always fluctuated. Of course he was a heel, but he's really good at he was good at what they did. They were both great at what they did.
Another thing about the match that stood out for me that I really liked was that it looked like at some point they had gone for the finish too early because it looked like Macho was trying to go into his trunks for something earlier. And then for whatever reason, they got back into the ring and then they had Tito go after the leg again. And that was
Yes.
the distraction to get the referee focused on Tito. And I remember just thinking about like, oh, what a great way for them to bring it back to where they needed to be. Because my thought when he started going for it again, I was like, okay, so clearly he was supposed to grab something from his trunks. How are they going to get the ref's attention again? And it was from Tito being aggressive. And I was like, that's so smart and such a realistic um story, right? Such a realistic thing that would happen in real sports where one of the competitors would get overcome with emotion and just be so focused on, oh, I'm going to break his leg. And that's going to cause the ref to get in there and distract him and then allow Savage to go and get what he needs for the finish. So, yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff in this match that I think you don't see anymore from modern day stuff. And this isn't necessarily even me like just being like old man yells at cloud saying like, oh, it's not as good as it was back in those days. I mean, it wasn't, but it isn't, but it's just not my point. My point is
That's right.
that there's so many things that were in this match that you just don't see today. They're just not a
Yeah.
part of matches today. Um, and I really think if there is anybody listening to this show that hasn't seen this match or isn't really even familiar with wrestling matches from this time period, this is actually a really good one to start with because of a lot of the things that you mentioned, how quick it is. It's a real breezy watch, but also for a 14-minute match, there is a lot of action in it. And I was actually thinking to myself, like, man, this is a very fast-paced match for the kind of wrestling that we were getting in those mid 80s. There's usually, 1 to 2 rest holds, so, and like don't get me wrong, Tito and Savage still do a little bit of stalling on the outside, but I think here's one of the major differences for me that I noticed anyway, which is that they're doing it so that they can give the crowd time to rest and build up their tension. Because if you watch the first couple minutes of that match, it's pretty like quiet. Like you can hear fans talking and murmuring stuff, but they're not really into it until Tito goes on his first big flurry and then he goes for the flying elbow. And then
Absolutely.
they come alive, man. They come unglued for that. And then Savage gets out of the ring and then they all get really mad at him.
Right. And then we can't omit the ref bump.
Yes.
And you always have to have a ref bump, Derek. Anyways, and also the the crowd cheer for Savage when he won the title.
Oh
The
yeah,
crowd,
that threw me off too because I was like, do they just not like Tito? But it's because title changes were a big deal back then.
absolutely, and it really didn't happen at house shows very rarely. It was usually pay-per-views. Pay-per-views were basically still new at the time, just a couple of years, if that old. But when you were able to see a title change live, it was something to see. This is something you couldn't wait to go back to school the next day and tell your friends, and this is what happened, blah blah blah, and all this. And but yeah, the crowd was like really behind Savage when he took that title from Santana.
Yeah, it really meant something to them to see something like that. And I mean, I'm assuming that as a kid watching that, that was a big deal for you too, to be like, oh my God, I
Absolutely.
got to just witness a big title change here.
Absolutely. Like I said, on the 12-foot dish. And I would record those back in the day, right? The old tapes. And I would wear out my tapes by rewatching this. Because again, wrestling was once a week, and it was like on Saturdays back in the day. So you didn't have YouTube, like I said before, the internet. So I'd always pop in a tape, or I'd go rent the best of WWF at their video store. And, it's just one of my favorite matches. And yeah, you didn't see title matches like that often, and you just had to brag about it the next day or whatever. It just stuck with me, and it still does to this day.
Did you have a lot of friends growing up who were like into wrestling with you, or were you kind of like the odd man out kind of thing? Because I didn't have like wrestling friends. Like I had like one wrestling fan friend when I was a kid, and then my circle grew and stuff when I got to high school. Of course, it was also very popular, so it's a bit easier, I think, to get into wrestling groups when it's popular. But I think whenever it's kind of on the downswing or not as popular, it's a little harder to do so. Of course, this was kind of right in the midst of the whole rock and wrestling thing, so I don't know, like was wrestling popular with you and your friends as teenagers at that time?
As teenagers, like I'd say from like when I got into ninth grade, we had our little cliques, during lunchtime, we'd talk about wrestling and all that. But then you had the other ones that you guys were talking about that you guys still watch that. And like I'd say from 10th on, it stopped. Then I went to, college and stuff, and it wasn't the same anymore because also like I didn't have any siblings, no siblings. So I would always watch by myself. I'm thankful my mom and dad, were into it as well. And we've seen a lot of local wrestling, like international wrestling, AWA, and all that stuff. But to be honest, like I didn't really have that many friends like you. I had like maybe that one before the high school, and then high school first year in high school. Okay, it was there, but after that, we were talking about Saturday night's main event more or less, right? Like happening every month or so. So, but after that, it weaned off. So
So like for that one friend that you had, like was this a big topic of discussion after there? Did you guys sit there and like, or did you call them up immediately and was like, oh my God, did you see this match? Did you see what happened with the belt? Tito, he lost the belt.
actually, he was my neighbor from a couple of houses down. So we'd watch it. Like he'd come over to my place,
Even better.
and like maybe a day or two later, I'd go back to his place. We watch it with the tape that I recorded it on, and his family. They were 13 in a family. So we all sat down in the living room, everybody on the floor, the couch, whatever, and we're all watching that hour and a half, hour, 45 minute, event
Well, because you got
on
to
tape.
watch the whole thing to get to
You
the
have
main
to.
event, right?
You have to. You had to Duke the Dumpster, or not Duke the Dumpster, the Duke of Dorchester, Pete Doherty, and all these guys, SD Jones and stuff. And leading up, I don't remember what the main event is because it was probably a Hogan thing. But again, my thing of that tape that time was the Santana Savage match.
And
That's
there's
the
the
one.
bell. 20-minute time limit draw. I'm sorry, we've gone to a time limit draw, Mark. That means our episode is over. But I want to thank you so much for coming on the show and
Absolutely.
talking about this great match with us. Please, links will be in the description. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. Thanks for coming on the show, Mark. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it, sir. And I want a rematch at some point.
You got it. Well, there you have it. Mark and I chatted about Randy Savage versus Tito Santana for as long as the time limit would allow us, but the bell has to ring. And at that point, we got to cut it off. We will have Mark back on the show eventually. I would love you to do me a favor, which is could you comment on this episode, whether you're watching it on YouTube, listening to it on Spotify, iTunes, however else you're watching it or listening to it, and you've got a chance to comment on it. Can you tell us what did you think of the Tito Santana Randy Savage match? Or hey, you know what? Maybe you didn't have time to watch it. No problem. Just let us know that you watched or listened to this episode by commenting, "Ooh, yeah." Just your favorite Macho Man quote there. "Ooh, yeah." Put it in the comments to let me know. And if you have some time and you want to support this show specifically, give us a follow on our YouTube, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell on YouTube, follow us, subscribe to us on Spotify, iTunes, leave a rating, a big positive one if you can, if you like the show. That'd be really fantastic. And there's lots of different ways that you can support Rock Solid Wrestling. This is the official podcast of Rock Solid Wrestling. And this week I'm going to promote our brand new line of merchandise over at rocksolidgear.ca, specifically the old school collection. We talked about an old school match on this episode. I think there's no more appropriate way to help out Rock Solid Wrestling than by getting yourself an keeping it old school t-shirt or hoodie or mug or tank top. There's all kinds of stuff over. So check that out, rocksolidgear.ca. That's going to do it for me. I'm out of time. Thank you so much for joining us on the episode this week. We'll see you on the next one.